May
We
7th.
need to start. Okay, now that we've started the recording, we can begin. Thank you.
Oh, we have to go back again. The time is 4:47. And today is May 17. We have a special meeting to discuss the last map and precinct for 2022 election. So, Alison, you're going to talk. Janet's going to talk. Who's going to explain? all
Yeah,
the-
I'm
the
going
data?
to talk and Chris Zizit is going to talk. And then if we need to pull in Janet, we can pull Janet as well, although she's multitasking and doing some other things right now as well. What we have before you today, which we shared around and put up on the website, is our final list of the polling places that the board has not previously voted on, where we have some sort of a change that needs to be made. And I want to apologize personally for the fact that I had thought that we could wait until next Monday to have this discussion. I was wrong. I found out on the sort of technical side of what we're doing, we have some hurry ups coming in. And in fact, we've really, because of the compressed timetable for planning for this election and because of just the extra time that it has taken us in order for us to change polling places where we had the election delayed by 3 weeks, we are needing to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we have begun on this weekend, we began ballot proofing. And in order to do ballot proofing, we had to make some assumptions about which polling places were going to be consolidated and which polling places were going to be standalone. And so the list even that we are presenting to you today, which we've had to accelerate by a number of days in order to make sure that we finalize everything that the state board needs, we're already assuming in some cases that we are going to have some of these polling places either consolidated or that we're going to have them apart. And so as we talk through each of these, we can talk about that scenario and talk through where hopefully we have made the correct interpretation or assumption about what the board's final action was going to be. We've talked about these in many cases for months now. And so hopefully, with few exceptions, there won't be a lot of question or controversy about these. But again, I just want to apologize that we do not have the additional time that I had hoped for this conversation, and just ask for your understanding of the fact that this is a meeting that we had to accelerate and do as a special meeting. So I'm going to turn the camera over to Chris Zizit, our operations manager, who is going to talk a little bit about the specific polling places that we have here, and then we can get into any questions and into your vote. Let me pass this over to Chris.
Good afternoon. This is Chris Zizit, Operations Manager, and as Allison McLaughlin just mentioned, we have been going over several of these polling places now for well over a year. Some of them we knew in advance of the redistricting, in advance also of the delay of the election. Those we have been talking about with the board now for, like I say, a year's time. But most of them that are on this list are construction related. We had added 516 Mid-County Recreation. I don't think we've had conversation with the board regarding that, but that is a demolition at Stonegate Elementary School, and we've decided that Mid-County Recreation, our proposal is that is the best temporary location as we're waiting for Stonegate to come back online. Longwood 816 is new. As we were looking through our adjacent precincts and proposing the best viable temporary solution, we decided that yes, Longwood was much better than our previous recommendation. So Longwood is now subbing for Greenwood Elementary, while Greenwood is unavailable during the summer because of abatement. Then the next.
Chris, could I ask you a question about that? So that's for both precinct 8-2 and precinct 816? They're going to both be at Longwood for the primary?
For the primary, yes, that is a consolidated situation for the primary. Greenwood Elementary will come back online for the general election. As I said earlier, there were several abatement processes or projects going on throughout MCPS this summer. Greenwood happened to be one of those chosen for abatement and unavailable to us in the summer, but certainly it will be available to us in November. And voters would be able to then continue using their home precinct of Greenwood.
And is the plan that both precincts will be at Greenwood, or that one of them in the November election would be at Longwood and one of them would be at Greenwood?
One of them will be a standalone. One of them will be a standalone at Longwood. That's 802.
Okay.
And that's because of redistricting. The standalone 816 is a temporary assignment to Longwood. They should return to Greenwood Elementary, their home precinct. Greenwood, because of redistricting, was divided up some.
Okay, now is that still the case in terms of the current districts? Because it looked like 8-2 and 816 had the same district makeup on the list that I looked at yesterday. Now, admittedly, I don't know if the list I was looking at yesterday was the right list, but
I'll go double check that.
I thought that those, now, and I'm not objecting because it might be a question of numbers. It may be too many people to have in an elementary school.
And
But it just may not be that redistricting is what would be the reason for that. It might be that there are other reasons.
well, as you remember, as we were going through redistricting, we tried to adjust and conform to the new lines where necessary. But when we looked at election district 8, we felt that after going through several iterations of changing precincts in election district 8, the polling places were starting to go askew. Things didn't quite make sense. So we tried to realign polling places and precincts so that the polling places assigned to the various precincts made sense and were either adjacent or served the voters in their area better than letting the configuration go as it originally stood.
Okay, and I do agree with you that the new suggestion for 816 is far better than it was before, and thank you for that.
And I think that was the first decision, and then when we went through these iterations of trying to reconform that area, that one was overlooked.
This was a very complicated process.
Yeah, and David, I think it's a different congressional district.
I think that they're both currently in the 8th. Because when I looked at the chart said it was in the 3rd, but the 3rd is not in Montgomery County at all anymore.
I'm looking at a chart that says 0806 is in the congressional district 4.
No, we're not looking at 0806. It's 0802 and 0816.
Oh, 0816. Okay.
The split was done because of the number of voters that were at Greenwood.
Okay.
That's why we did the original.
Okay,
split and
so
made
it was not based on redistricting. It was based on numbers. We're going to have them combined at Longwood for the primary. We're going to have one precinct at Longwood and one precinct at Greenwood for the general.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next one down that I believe has not really been discussed at length, the recommendation is that we use Northwood for the new middle school, Odessa Shannon, which was originally Colonel Ebrook Lee. Ebrook Lee is being demolished as we speak, and Odessa is ready to go for the fall semester of school, but Odessa has no parking. The parking lot has been delayed. So there's no way that we would be able to use Odessa. We just found that out in recent conversations with MCPS. So we're suggesting that we use Northwood as a temporary home for Odessa, Shannon,
Now, I have
during
a,
the summer months.
I do have a question about that, and we may not have a choice, but 1333 is in between 1320 and Northwood High School, and to my knowledge, Northwood High School is not in 1333. So my question is, can we legally do this, or are we at the point now? I mean, I realize we may not have many other choices.
Would you like to speak to that, Kevin, or?
Sure, I will. I think we can, David. I think it's under an emergency situation, but I think the board has to balance the convenience to the majority of the registered voters in the polling place, along with the requirement that as a general proposition, it's supposed to be adjacent. But there are a number of factors that the board has to take a look at. And I think there's a justification for going outside the requirement that we normally have, that it be adjacent.
And I gather that it's too many voters in 1320 to put them at 1333, which is in a Kent Mill Elementary School.
True.
That's my understanding, yes.
Right now, we're trying to accommodate about 2,350 voters, and to put that amount in this smaller elementary school would, we think, put that at an imbalance, that
Okay.
there would be too many in that school,
Okay,
too many
thank you.
voters.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. And then another one, 1334 on your list that we really haven't talked a lot about was Kensington Town Hall, not knowing that we would need this location during the middle of summer, has taken this time period to do some renovations to their large town hall. And it's under construction, and they haven't been able to get a firm estimate of time. Their timeline is still pending with the contractors. So we felt that we couldn't run the risk of waiting to find out if they would actually be completed with their renovations before the 19th of July. So we're proposing that we vote at Newport for the summer election, for the primary election.
Now I have a question about that one too, Chris. As I recall, when you showed that one to us before, there was a choice there were two different middle school choices. One was in one direction and one was in the other.
Correct.
I'm just curious as to how you picked the one that you did, because it does seem to require going across University Boulevard.
Yes. Silver Creek, which is south of the town hall, south of Kensington, Newport Mill being north of the town of Kensington. We felt practical in choosing Newport. No, we weren't using Newport for another location. And Silver Creek now is a consolidated situation as it is. We're putting two precincts in Silver Creek currently
You're saying
for the summer election.
You're saying what you're saying, in addition to 1334, there's already two precincts at Silver Creek.
It will be a consolidated issue, or
Do you know
situation.
how many voters that is, just roughly?
Janet, can you run those numbers for Silver Creek for us?
What's the precinct numbers?
Silver Creek, just
Consolidation of the two that are there.
just a second.
I just need to know the numbers. I can't find them. The precinct numbers.
You have the consolidated.
I'm looking for the list myself.
Not by. I'm looking. I don't have the alpha list.
13,
Go. That school is about 2 blocks from my house. And I'm
13-3 is one of them.
It's a big facility
Um,
and brand new.
Chris, I think it was one of the ones that got resolved, maybe, that we were gonna put there.
Okay,
I see
What are
13-3 on the alphabetical list. I don't see Silver Creek used again, but I don't know if the alphabetical list is the one that's the most up to date.
okay, so Janet, you're thinking that we
It was
didn't,
one of the, on that list of polling places we had that were problems, and we were thinking of putting them at Silver Creek, but I think it got resolved, so we didn't have to.
okay,
use
so
them.
you didn't consolidate Silver Creeks with.
No, because there was nothing on your list to consolidate it with.
Okay.
So how many voters do we have at 1303 then?
2,412.
So
And how many you're proposing at Newport?
Newport, it's 2,517. So that would mean we would have Newport standalone with 2,517 voters at Newport, or we could move them down to Silver Creek, which would put it to about 4,500 plus.
But then it doesn't require crossing University Boulevard or Connecticut Avenue.
Correct. They would go down, and Silver Creek is within a community where they wouldn't be crossing over
Right.
Connecticut mainly. They wouldn't be.
Diane, we're in your neighborhood. What do you think?
I think Silver Creek is probably one of the most user-friendly. And I don't think crossing Connecticut Avenue is a big deal. I mean, it's 2
No,
blocks.
crossing
away from me.
crossing Connecticut Avenue is what the other option would be. They're talking about going from Kensington to Newport Middle School. So it would be like crossing University Boulevard, I guess, at that point, near like where the Kensington Pharmacy is.
Yeah, with plenty of crosswalk marked. I think I think all options you're discussing sound good.
Because of the time element of this, unfortunately, this is one where, because we had thought that we were going to be able to use Kensington Town Hall, we have these 2 precincts configured separately, and combining them into a single room where they appear together on the poll book and together in the scanner will create some challenges for us, where what we would do administratively, if the board chooses to go to Silver Creek instead of Newport Mill, is that we would need to set that up so that they were in separate queues. So they're either in separate rooms, or, stanchions down the middle and poll books and scanners on separate sides of the room. Do we have 2 rooms at Silver Creek that we could use? Do you know, Chris? Or would we?
No.
There's a technical piece we need to work through if the board should choose to go to Silver Creek instead of to a standalone facility, and the best standalone facility that we can identify. We can do it. We just need to work through that technical.
Right. I mean, part of my concern is this to me is similar to, we decided to move out of Holiday Park for the voters. I don't remember the name of the precinct, but the voters who would have to cross both Randolph and Veers Mill, no, both Connecticut and Veers Mill, in order to get to Holiday Park. This, to me, having to get to Newport Mill is more challenging than getting to Silver Creek. On the other hand, I don't want to create a whole bunch of extra work for you all unnecessarily. I wish that the folks in the affected precinct could tell us what their preference would be. I thought that when we had the discussion previously that we had talked about the whole crossing a major roadway issue. And I definitely understand if there had been 2 other precincts in Silver Creek, that would be the answer, that we couldn't do it.
Yeah, and my preference would be to use Kensington Town Hall. But since we can't do that, there's not a great choice here. We either have to cross University, or we have to set these 2 precincts up separately at Silver Creek. I mean, I used to live down in that area myself. My kids went to Oakland Terrace, and then they went to Newport Mill. So, the neighborhood certainly used to at least, or does, I think, still go ahead and orient to Newport Mill, Silver Creek, the new school. Yeah, you don't have to cross a major road. But
If you do consolidate at Silver Creek, I've got to say, they squeezed a big school in what was not really regulation sized property. There's not a ton of parking.
Well, and
So
Janet,
She's
go ahead.
right about.
Janet, can you walk through this consolidated versus non-consolidated? Because we've designated certain locations as consolidated and others that are not going to be consolidated. How does that affect our ballot proofing, which is due today, correct?
If we leave them standalone and put them in the same room, we're okay. If we consolidate, we got to go back to the state, and I'm not sure they're going to be willing at this point to actually consolidate them into the same scanner, the same poll book.
I wouldn't propose to consolidate them. I would propose to have the two separate, as I think we've talked about that before. I guess I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to get it straight in terms of the different documents here. The precinct we're talking about is 1334,
that's correct.
Correct.
and I'm just trying to find a map of the precinct because it's not on our website at the moment. I don't think. Oh, I see. There's a combined map. Hang on a second.
And so our staff recommendation is to go to the facility that is standalone rather than having to direct people into two different queues in order to vote.
I'm troubled by asking all those voters to cross University Boulevard rather than
Yeah, but
walk
what,
through the neighborhood.
Almi, yes.
no, I was gonna just say, I don't think crossing a street is all that bad, but I don't know what the demographics of that particular area are, but if we haven't got any good alternatives, I'm not sure what to do.
Well, it sounds like our alternative is to have them cross the major roadway or have them or to have two polling places within a single building, which we're doing. Are we doing that in other places as well?
No.
Do we have any
not.
combines that are not consolidated at this point?
No, we don't have any combines. It's either
No.
consolidated or standalone.
Alice and Chris, that's it. We don't have any other choice, right?
I
No,
don't,
they just told us we have a choice. It's a question of whether we have two different sign-ins in the same building, or whether whether we're going to go into a different building that requires crossing a major roadway.
Right, and can I ask for clarification to add to that, would that putting both in the same at the Silver Creek location, is that combining the 2,400 voters and the 2,500?
Yes.
I just
Yeah.
think that's too many.
and I think that's just too many.
There's just not enough parking, number one. I just think it's too problematic to put them in Silver Creek, given, weighing the concern, the very understandable concern of having them cross University.
Well, we're either faced with having them cross the street or having them not be able to park.
Yeah, I think Silver
Yeah.
Creek, that's too many people for this neighborhood setup.
So,
I don't know which one is worse, either, not being
Right.
able to park or crossing a street. I mean, I actually don't think it's that hard to cross a street. There are good street crossing accesses there.
This is a pretty
just-
complicated area. If
Yeah.
where University Boulevard connects with Connecticut Avenue, which is
Yeah,
where we're
no,
talking about.
I know, we used to live right near there. And it can be a bit of a mess, but also if you can't park, that's a bit of a mess.
Is there any chance to show us, I'm having trouble pulling it up and I'm sorry about that. Is there any chance you can show us the map of these precincts?
We can
To
certainly do
share.
that. Janet, do you have that you
Is
can?
that- Sorry,
Well, while Janet's checking,
like if we can all just look at it geographically one last time, maybe we
I,
could
I,
put this
I
to
have it on
bed.
my screen if I'm allowed to share.
Janet?
That-
Should
is
have,
that-
I mean,
you
that's
should
fine
have
with
share
me.
screen.
All right,
You should have
Can-
share screen at the bottom.
okay. Can you guys see that?
Yeah,
There we go.
can.
So as I understand it, Newport Mill is roughly above where it says 1327 on Newport Mill Road. The precinct we're talking about is 1334. And Silver Creek is, I guess, below the map, but not far below the map.
Okay, can you
Correct.
show me the top of 1327? Please, okay, there we go.
So that's Veers Mill in Connecticut at this tip over here.
Okay,
But the voters we're talking about are the ones who are in 1334,
right,
who they either the red line here where it says University Boulevard, actual University Boulevard, I think curves around this way.
Yes.
right.
But so we're talking about these folks having to potentially cross University, or these folks having to cross Connecticut. Whereas now, as
That's
far
only
as
if
where
that's if they walk though, David, right? I mean, we're assuming that the people are, that would only apply to people who are not driving to the
that is exactly correct. It applies to people who are walking, which, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the board has been concerned in the past, is certainly something we want to facilitate. If people want to walk to the polls.
And these are important questions, and this is, why these questions come to the board to weigh. The other factor that was important to the staff in recommending that we go to Newport Mill was the challenges that we face when we have not yet checked in a voter, and we need to refer the voter either to line A or to line B, or to room A or to room B. And the challenges that we face when we are faced with needing to do that in a single building. And the way that voters they'll walk up to the facility knowing that they look themselves up and they're supposed to vote at that building. But it takes a human communication, and sometimes that can be a challenge with voters entering from different areas to reach those voters, direct them into the right queue, and not have them get to the poll book after maybe having waited in a line and then need to be redirected. Oh no, you need to be over at that poll book. And so avoiding that was really the strongest factor in the staff in making a staff recommendation that we put this precinct at a location where it would not need to be in the same building, but in a different queue than another precinct.
So where would the two different ones be located?
Do we have two rooms at Silver Creek that we can use, or would we be using the same room divided?
I think we would use the same room divided.
They
At
don't have a
this-
gym and a cafeteria?
Well, the gymnasiums for the most part, are not air conditioned. And since we're looking at a July election,
Wow.
we
Do
have
we know
been
if this one is, though?
avoiding, no, I don't.
Okay.
We've been
Yes.
avoiding the gyms because we've been told by MCPS that for the most part, there are no gyms that are air conditioned.
Right, exactly. You cannot use it, no air conditioning. I don't know what's the problem, just cross the street. People these days, they don't walk, they just go with the neighbor if they don't have a car or something. I don't think it's a big deal. My precinct, which is Richmond, changed to a school, which I have to cross River Road, and that's busy road. So what? I do that.
I think for 50 in excess, well, yeah, for more than 5,000 people, there's just not enough parking in that spot.
Well, 5,000 people, of course, aren't going to show up for a gubernatorial primary election on election day, but agreed that it would not be ideal. I would point out that when it is a Kensington Town Hall, it's almost exactly in the middle of the precinct, and a lot of people do walk to the polls.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Sure, sure.
So these are people who are used to walking to the polls.
But it looks like Newport Mill is probably the least unattractive of the options that we have open to us, I would say.
Yeah, I think I would analyze it differently. I would view the crossing of that roadway to be, and I will say that I've been consistent on this, and I won't bore you all with the list, but there's a number of times where I have objected to crossing of major roadways in the past, and I think I would vote against. Well, I would propose that we go to that we go to Silver Creek, but I realize that that may not be the prevailing view.
So what's the solution, David?
I just told you what I think the solution is. The solution is to go to Silver Creek and to.
It's 5,000? And is not enough parking where people will park?
Well, I haven't heard how many parking spaces they have to know what the parking situation is.
Diane,
Diane says that they have
No.
limited parking, and they are a middle school, so of course they're going to have less parking than a lot of other places. But
right, and this one is even less optimal than most because they squeezed too big a building into too small a spot. But there was a lot of controversy over a couple of years when they finally decided to go with the location regardless. It's like putting a 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag is how they explained it. And so they added as many spots as they could, which is not optimal. And
so
I've got to say, the neighborhood, even considering the university, I was troubled when we were talking about Veers Mill a couple of weeks ago and having to cross that. And that to me is a frightening proposition. The university, this area, which is so residential, even though these are commercial roadways, I think is much friendlier for pedestrians than problem areas we've talked about in the past. And I would not, and it is my, it's my neighborhood, I would not have qualms about okaying the two separate locations because of the need for voters to cross those two roadways, either Connecticut or University, given all the other factors we're having to consider.
Board's decision.
Was it, Diane, are you saying that you'd like to go to Silver Creek or you would favor?
I'd like to see the Newport and Silver Creek
Yeah,
separate. This time I would go with that over my concerns about the roadways, which are not as frightening to traverse as others that we've been concerned about in the past.
We see Newport and Silver Creek on this map.
Newport is on this map roughly where the 13 is in 1327.
Right.
Silver Creek is just off of the map, I believe, at the bottom.
yeah.
I've been trying to compare to compare to Google to see exactly how far off, but I think it's roughly just off of the map at the bottom. I know that Alan has joined us and lives in that neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
All I was going to say to Diane is that I grew up in I've driven down University Boulevard probably more than any other street in my whole life. And I would just say that I don't see a significant difference between how safe it is at the corner of Veers Mill in Connecticut and at the corner of University in Connecticut. I see it as being roughly the same. I do think that we have some difficult choices here, and I definitely understand how some might view it differently than I do.
I'm coming in late. What is the issue, please?
The issue is whether to have 1334 in the primary vote at Newport Middle School, where it would be by itself because the Kensington Town Hall is not available, or to have it at Silver Creek Middle School, which already has 13-3 voting there, and it would have to be not only 2 precincts in the same school, but would also be it'd have to be set up separately because it's too late to combine the precincts. So it's basically a very large group of voters at one location that doesn't require crossing the major roadway versus its own location, but crossing the major roadway.
I
Okay.
have another
Thank you.
map that I can show you at hand. It would take me a minute to find the one
All
with
right,
the.
I will stop sharing then.
Of the polling places and of the schools, but I do have another map that I have open on my screen that is just the schools, so you can see where Silver Creek is.
And Alan, as one of the other locals in the area, I have kind of gone on a little too much about how I think there's not adequate parking at Silver Creek. If we're talking about 5,000 plus voters, that I am not averse to this time, given all factors, having people cross over to Newport at University, because we're in a very residential area. Even those are commercial roadways. I think they're well regulated.
So if you, I don't know if you can see the school map on my screen.
We can, but it probably needs to be closer up if you can do that.
The only purpose of this is to just show you and verify that, yes, in fact, Newport Middle School is effectively right next door to Einstein High School. And then you can see where Silver Creek is down sort of south of the location that we're talking about. I don't know if you can, it doesn't have the overlay of the precincts. But you can see it's a little west and south of where Florissant is.
How many parking places at Silver Creek? I think Diane is right. Not adequate parking probably, but what's the number of parking places?
I can go get it.
Yeah,
Chris is going to go check and see how many parking spaces we have there.
and just to recap, did you say because of the air conditioning situation, if 5,000 voters were to be consolidated at Silver Creek, they would be in one room?
That's why we generally don't use gyms. I do not
Okay.
know whether Silver Creek has an air-conditioned gym or not.
It's a relatively newer school, but I don't know if that tells us the answer.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Salut, c'est John.
Yeah.
Aujourd'hui,
If
je vous
that's the
propose de gagner
deciding
n'importe
question for the board, I can try to reach out to the school system and find out.
That, I would appreciate that if you could. I mean, do we have time? I could run down the street and ask.
Depends whether
You
they
could run down
I'll
the
be back
street.
before we're done.
Yeah, you can run down the street, just go in the gym and see for yourself.
Exactly.
So when we were talking to Gary, he was actually saying the new schools, they're not air conditioned in the gyms either.
They're not?
Okay.
That's what he
Okay.
told us, but there are a few exceptions, but we just don't know what they are.
How old is the school? Because I just pulled up an article from 2018 saying a Silver Creek Middle School volleyball game was canceled because the gym without air conditioning was too hot.
Oh,
This
Okay.
was August 29th of 2018.
This is a
That
brand new,
sounds
that's about how old the
That-
building
yeah,
is.
yeah, I was going to say that's about right. There
Yeah,
was no
yeah.
Silver Creek Middle School before this one. So
Yeah.
if they canceled the game in 2018, that's what we're talking about when it was new.
so
Yeah,
there's the answer.
well. Looks like Newport is looking more and more possible.
So it's just the parking spaces. Let me see if I can get since we're waiting for Chris anyway, let me see if I can get a direct confirmation that the air conditioning wasn't just out. with me.
It's also on a hill and the limited parking is on two very different levels. So there's a fair amount of walking, even if you can get half of the parking requires a little bit of walking if we're talking about older people or handicapped voters. It's just not real friendly. I mean,
I mean, if this is the worst problem we have in the whole county in terms of a voting location, let's just, live with it. I mean, come on, how many precincts are there? And how many voting places are there?
Actually, this is in Silversburg, Indiana, so that's the wrong school.
oh,
All right, well, I have messaged,
Sellersburg, Indiana.
Okay,
Silversburg is
Chris,
about
tell
3 or
us
4
what
years
happened.
old.
How many
pick up their
parking?
phone right away.
Oh,
But in the
Uh,
meantime, Chris.
Hold on, guys.
yeah, I
Please.
just asked, a friend down the street whose kid goes to Silver Creek. I asked if it's air conditioned. He said, I think so, but if I remember correctly, it still gets hot when full.
okay.
Okay, let's see, Chris, how many parking space?
110,
Oh.
which includes their handicap, their accessible spots as well,
That's nothing, 110 is nothing.
total.
That's not very many when you're talking about 5,000 voters.
And
Right.
it's on two very distinct levels.
A lot of those 5,000 will be voting by mail and by early voting. I don't know the percentage, but a lot of people around here vote by mail.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
exactly. Crossing the street, like, is not 5,000 people gonna cross the street.
No, it won't be 5,000 people crossing the street, but it will be some.
So,
And I mean, like I said, I can see that we have a series of less than desirable choices. I definitely don't accept the idea that University Boulevard is a residential street. There's businesses on both sides of University Boulevard at Newport Mill Road, where we're talking about people crossing. But it sounds like it's going to be either crowded in one place or people are going to have to cross a street in another place. And
I think we ought to call
Driveway.
the question, guys. Call the question. Let's just have a vote and see who
Yeah.
prefers to cross streets or who prefers to not be able to park.
all right, let's call the question.
I don't know how to solve the problem.
I think that's a good way to solve it. We can vote on it. That's fine.
Madam President, would the chair entertain a motion?
Yes, please.
Madam President, I would move that we change the polling place for precinct 1334 from Kensington Town Hall to Newport Mill Middle School, as recommended by the staff.
I'll
Second.
second.
I have a question about Alex's motion, because as I understand the staff recommendation, it is only for the primary. I just want to make sure, is your motion only for the primary?
As a matter of process, what we're going to do is that we're going to submit a single list of sites to the state board. And then, correct me if I'm wrong on past precedent on this, Kevin, but then what we would do is that anything that we need to change in between the primary and the general, we'll do that as an emergency polling place change that we submit to the state board after the primary. Is that correct,
Ouch.
Kevin?
Yeah,
Is that what we've done in the past? I thought that wasn't what we'd done in the past.
I don't know that we consider it an emergency polling place change. I mean, they're polling places that we advise the state board that we're returning to because construction's already been completed.
That's kind of the point here, right? I mean, isn't Kensington Town Hall going to be available in November?
Yes, it will be.
Well, that's the point for a lot of these.
Right,
I mean, a
For all-
lot
I'll
of
be
these are
putting
going to
Kevin
be
on the
available.
process then.
right. So, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I would really be, I may vote against the motion and either way, but I will really be against the motion if we're talking about moving the general election because of this.
Why don't we amend the motion? Alex, will you take an amendment to the motion that says for the purposes of submitting the list this week?
I mean, yeah, I'm certainly willing to do that. The list that I'm looking at didn't indicate whether the change was recommended to be permanent for both primary and general, only for primary. I was not aware of that, but
So the motion then is to go to Newport Middle School for the primary and then return to Kensington Town Hall for the general? Is that correct?
No, I think we have to reconsider it at that point.
Well, why would we want to have this conversation again if we don't have to?
Okay,
well, I guess for purposes of amending the motion, Madam President, I guess I would ask, how confident are we that Kensington Town Hall will be available? For
yeah.
the general.
I mean, if there's construction going on there, I've never seen construction come in on time.
Well, but if you're going to go down that route, I'd like a list of all of the facilities that we are using for the primary and switching back in the general that are affected by construction, because this is not the only one.
Well,
There are
Significant number, yes.
David, I would suggest that the board vote on the location for the primary, because there are a number of locations where the board's going to have to consider, based upon the HVAC construction that MCPS did over the summer, that obviously those schools weren't available for the primary, to return those voters for the general.
Okay,
I would be happy if that's what the motion is, but that's not what Alex said.
well, let's amend the motion then so it relates to the primary only.
Well,
Alex,
yeah, Madam President, with leave of the chair, I would amend my motion, and that the motion as amended would be that the board select Newport Middle School as the polling place for precinct 1334 solely for purposes of the 2022 primary election.
I'll second.
me second. Yes, David.
I'd
Your
like
hand
to-
is up.
Yes, my hand is up. I move to amend the motion to substitute the Silver Creek Middle School for Newport Middle School for the reasons we've discussed.
I second it.
Discussion? Anybody?
But Alan, I thought you were not in favor of moving to Silver Creek.
Well, I was concerned about the parking. All things considered, and considering the fact that a lot of people will be voting by mail and early voting, I think that we can squeeze them in there. There's also residential parking along Saw. They can park in Diane's driveway.
For nominal fee. No.
They can park in your driveway, Al.
They can park. I don't care. They can do that too. They can park. There's a lot of street parking around there, so I think we can squeeze them in there. And it's easier for people to get from 1334 to 1303 to Silver Creek Middle School. So if I were voting, I'd vote for Silver Creek.
Kevin?
Okay, well, the board should vote on the amendment, and if the amendment passes, it passes. If it fails, then vote on the original motion.
So we have two motions now?
There is a
No,
motion
wait.
and an amendment. Each must be voted on. The amendment must be voted on first.
At least it's so complicated.
Well, and so what we're voting on right now is David's amendment.
Correct.
Correct.
Can
Correct.
you repeat your,
Up or down? My
Can you-
amendment is to substitute Silver Creek Middle School for Newport Middle School.
So Naheed, how do you want to, Madam Chair, how do you want to handle the, Madam
Who-
President?
Alan seconded, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So how about Alex's motion? So
That comes
Yeah, we have
later.
to vote on David's.
First, you have to vote on my amendment. If the amendment passes, then you vote on the main motion as amended. If the amendment fails, you vote on the main motion without the amendment.
Yep.
So the first vote, a yes, is to go to Silver Creek, and a no is to go to Kensington Town Hall.
No, and no is not to
no,
go
no
to
is
Silver
to-
Creek.
To
A no
Newport.
remains at Newport Mill.
Newport.
A yes is to go to
Yeah, no, let's clarify this again.
Kensington Hall.
I maybe I'm the only one confused, but the amendment is to go where?
Silver Creek.
Silver Creek.
Okay,
The amendment is to have both polling places vote at Silver Creek.
okay, fine. Call the
So-
question.
So Madam Chair, would you want a roll call vote on the amendment?
I guess yes.
Okay,
So let's
So-
do that. Those
So
in
all in
favor, say-
favor, right?
all in favor?
No.
say- Well, you don't have to, you can do it as a roll call or not.
Yeah, Madam
Elise.
President, I would suggest that you call each board member who can vote by name and have their vote recorded by Ms. Marino.
All right. I'm gonna call them David. David first. Yes, David.
I'll vote yes on my amendment.
Ami,
I vote no.
Elise,
Yes.
Diane,
I vote no.
Alan, and Alex. I guess you don't have vote. I said no.
Okay.
So, yes,
Now vote on the original motion proposed by Alex.
David,
And this is Newport Mill for the primary.
Correct.
I'll vote yes.
Ami,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
yes. So pass.
So procedurally then, Chris, do you want to go ahead and talk
Thank you.
through anything else on this list? And then I assume the board is going to want to see if there's any others that you want to pull out individually or just vote on them all as a group.
I don't have further comment. As I said, a lot of these have been discussed over the past year because we knew that they were coming because of construction. The main changes were things that happened during redistricting and during the summer program projects for MCPS. Those came to us at the last minute, being that we changed to the 19th.
So I guess our question then is if you have any further questions for us on anything on this list or whether the board is prepared to just take a vote on the rest of them.
I do have a question. I don't recall it being on prior lists, for 1353, which votes normally at Sligo Middle School, but is being proposed to vote at Schweinhout Recreation Center.
What's the situation at Sligo Middle School?
Well, it was a summer change.
It's an
Sligo
HVAC
Middle-
issue.
Yeah. Sligo Middle was an HVAC, and so it's a summer change because they have the air conditioning and the heating pulled out. They're replacing HVAC at Sligo, so we propose using Swinehot.
So we do not have an air-conditioned space to use at
At-
Sligo Middle School at this time in July.
Correct.
So we had to go somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, and Schweinhout will continue to be the polling place for 1319 as well?
Yeah. Yes. Did we do it?
Yes, that is on my list of consolidated. It is
yes, you're
1319, that is correct.
Yes, it will
So-
be consolidated.
The
So
voter.
how many voters total at the Schweinhout Center?
You have that number at hand?
The Sligo, there's,
4,022.
That's a
After
lot.
it's
for
consolidated.
Schweinhout Center.
it's,
4,022, is that what you said?
Yes,
After it's consolidated or before?
that's consolidated.
After.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well-
1319 has 2,300. 1353 has like 1,800.
Does the Schweinhout Center cancel its activities on election day?
I believe they are, but
I can't answer that directly, but because we're pretty much taking over the building, there wouldn't be any programs going on in the major room, which is the room that we're using.
Right, we're using the one
Yeah.
room though for the two precincts.
Yes.
And how many, do we have any idea what the parking, I know that there's a parking lot there and it has a reasonable number of spaces, but I don't remember how many.
Look that up. I'll have to go look that up.
It's okay, I don't know what options we have. I mean, that's the, if there's no HVAC
Well, I will tell you, at Schweinhut, there is street parking, but I was down there for quite a while during the 2020 election, setting the drop box. And there
Right.
is a large parking. lot.
Yes, there is a large parking lot with a lot of handicap spaces,
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's a senior center.
yes.
And this is one where, because we have moved forward with this as a consolidation, where the work that we're doing on the back end is assuming that these two precincts are going to be checking in the same poll books and using the same scanners, that if the board does not want to do that and wants to go to a standalone site somewhere, then that'll be something that we'll have to work with the state on.
And it also proposes to go back to Sligo for the general election.
I
That
assume
would
so.
be my proposal for any of these summer projects, that voters would return to their home precinct for the November election.
Right. And and when you say that there's not an air conditioned space, I guess you mean Sligo usually votes in the cafeteria.
Correct. And MCPS was considerate of that. If they had
Mhm.
projects going on with HVAC, but they could cool the cafeteria, they allowed us to stay. In this particular situation, all of the HVAC is being pulled out and being redone. So they don't have a cool area at Sligo Middle School during the period that we'll be voting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next.
That's it, unless the board has other sites to discuss.
All right, okay. So the board, anybody has anything, David? How come you're quiet?
Don't
Wait,
ask
has-
why he's quiet, Madam President.
Yes, don't ask.
That's
don't
poking
ask.
the bear.
I was going to say, I don't think I've been particularly quiet today. I just was quiet because you answered my questions. I will say that I think that the staff has done an excellent job under difficult circumstances. And the fact that we ask questions does not imply otherwise. It just means that we care about the answers. But I think it was, you guys continue to have one of the hardest jobs around because things keep changing. 2020, you ran 3 elections at once, essentially. And for 2022, you run an election and then they change it on you. So, so it's a very difficult task, and I appreciate all the work that went into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay, can I make a motion that we approve whatever the package is that we need to approve at this point?
Yes,
Well, I mean, I would suggest we be very specific that what we're talking about is the 2022 polling place changes proposed spreadsheet. It's a single page and it's dated May 17th, 2022. Is that the list we're
Okay.
being asked to
Yes.
approve?
Yes, all
Acting
right.
Election
thank you, Alex. Okay, Ami, go ahead.
Okay, I propose that, I move that we, that we agree to the proposal on the page that Alex referred to.
I just want to ask a question. Is that page all of the changes, whether by redistricting, by construction, by HVAC, et cetera, or is there any other document that we need to be looking at as well?
No.
I believe that's the only page.
Right, that's what I'm asking the staff, just to be sure.
It is
Yeah.
just a document, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who will second it?
Second. I second the
any-
motion.
Any discussion?
Oh.
Those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? All right then, we have it. Thank you so very much, everybody, staff. I mean, I got an email from Janet, 1:00 in the morning. That means she was working. I mean, it's insane. And Chris was working hard, Allison, and was young lady, Janet, worked with you. You can mention her name. So I thank you so very much, guys, for your help.
Thank you
What is,
all
what,
for your support.
Alan, you have something to
I
say?
was clapping.
Oh, clapping, thank you.
Yeah, I'll clap too.
David, you clapping. It's not, your hand is not up. Good, thank you. So yes, Kevin.
I don't have anything to add.
All right, then what is next?
Adjourn, and we'll see you Monday if you'd like.
Well, there's a
Motion for
Motion to
adjournment.
adjourn.
Ami already.
Ami was ready to adjourn.
Who seconded?
I second.
Thank you. Those in
Ellen.
favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Oppose? No. David, how come you didn't oppose it? All right then. Thank you, guys. See you Monday.
You're asking for trouble,
See you
Naeem.
Monday.
You're
Have a
asking
good
for
day.
trouble.
Have a
Thank
good
you, Al.
weekend, everybody.
See you Monday.
Bye now.
Bye.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Ale. Okay, bye, guys. All right. I'm gonna leave.